Number 10, Judas Priest, Invincible Shield. Now, this is the long-awaited follow-up, coming 7 years after the incredible Firepower from 2017. Both of these albums are produced by Andy Sneap, who plays rhythm guitar with them on tour. And I don't think this album is as good as Firepower, but it's still super, super solid. Yeah, I also saw this band while they were out on tour for this record. They came over to Prudential Center in New Jersey about April 17th, I believe. Went there with the old man, had a blast at that show. My bare minimum wish list, I just wanted to hear Painkiller. If I was lucky, I'd get the Green Manalishi with the two-prong crown. You know, when a band has 19 albums, I don't 100% know what's going to be on the set list, but they played both those songs, and like I said, it was great. All right, so Halford still sounds great, both live and in the studio. You know, a lot of his lyrics on this album deal with concepts of repenting and kind of persevering through hardship. I don't know if Rob Halford became a born-again Christian, but it seems like he has at least kind of embraced more spirituality and things like that. Top tracks for me are Panic Attack, As God Is My Witness, and Trial by Fire. The latter of which has this cool kind of delay guitar effect that kind of reminds me of Judas Rising from 2005's Angel of Retribution. I imagine a lot of you are already very familiar with this album, so I'm not going to get super deep into it. But if you're not familiar with this album, then you better get familiar with it, and you better get unfamiliar with Mickey Mouse bands like Liturgy and Sleep Token. Number 9, from USA, Atrophy, Asylum. After laying dormant for 34 years, Atrophy graced us with their comeback album, Asylum. So for those uninitiated, Atrophy is an American thrash metal band coming out of Arizona, and they had 2 pretty good albums back in the day. 1988's Socialized Hate, which has got to be the most like 80s thrash album artwork I've ever seen, and I just got to say I love this retro kind of art style. And 1990's Violent by Nature. So now this version of Atrophy only has one member from the original Glory days, that is vocalist Brian Zimmerman. The rest of the band are all kind of new recruits that joined the band around 2021 to 2023. But the other members of Atrophy have their own group called Scars of Atrophy, and they released one EP in 2022, I believe. And this album is basically in the same style as their previous work, just kind of classic American straightforward thrash. You know, why fix it if it ain't broken, right? But it still holds up pretty well. You know, this isn't friggin' geezer thrash like Metallica's latest album. You know, if you go to the gym, you put some of these songs on your playlist, you will immediately add 50 pounds to your squat, bench, and deadlift. But yeah, my favorite songs from the album, I'd say, are Punishment for All and Seeds of Sorrow. Punishment for all. Number 8, from USA, Job for a Cowboy, Moon Healer. Now, I've never been the biggest fan of Job for a Cowboy. I think the Deathcore Doom EP is good, even though most of the time I hate Deathcore. I think the straight ahead death metal album Genesis is also pretty good, both of which, those have disgraceful scores on Metal Archives. The fuck is wrong with you people? Yeah, I didn't really care too much for the albums that came after that, but then in 2014, when they released Sun Healer, and I heard the very progressive-sounding Son of Nihility that had these very exotic-sounding chords and fretless bass, and for those of you who don't know, I'm a sucker for fretless bass. Got the Jaco Pastorius, Steve DiGiorgio from Death. I don't actually know if it's a fretless, but it sounds like a fretless, and I'm all over that shit. But then after they dropped that album, it was basically radio silence for just 10 years. You know, I was like, shit, these guys stopped making music right as they're hitting their stride. But then out of nowhere, they came out with the sequel, Moon Healer. As the title would suggest, it's kind of a continuation of what they did on Sun Healer, again, sticking with the very progressive sounding death metal, you know, kind of in the same vein of bands like The Faceless or Obscura, although I would say this album isn't as chaotic sounding or as emphatic on speed and technicality as something like Obscura, but kind of has those exotic chords, that kind of sound. My favorite songs from the album are Beyond the Chemical Doorway, Grinding Wheels of Orphanim, and A Sorrow-Filled Moon. Number 7, from USA/Columbia, depending on who you ask. I could care less. Inquisition, veneration of medieval mysticism and cosmological violence. Inquisition has to be the most consistent band in black metal. 9 albums in 26 years, and they all range in quality from pretty good to fucking awesome. So in typical Inquisition fashion, you know, Dagon, vocalist, guitarist, songwriter, switches up his vocals a little bit. It's kind of less the usual bullfrog croak and kind of more standard gruff black metal vocals. Although he does incorporate this weird kind of chanting type vocal style in the song. What is it? Crown of Light and Constellation. This album also shows Inquisition adding kind of a new layer to their sound. I don't know if it's a synthesizer or a very effect-layered guitar, but you can kind of hear some of this stuff going on in the opening track, Witchcraft Within a Gothic Tomb. And this album somewhat kind of continues what they started on with 2020's Black Mass for a Mass Grave, where they're kind of incorporating more atmospheric elements into their music. Now, don't panic. It's not like Inquisition totally pussed out and made like an Alcest record. You know, it adds more of a ritualistic ambiance to it, you know, as opposed to the over-repetitive, boring-ass wank that most, you know, Atmo Black, post-Black gaze, whatever, usually is. I think the new album is almost kind of like a mix of these two. The aforementioned Black Mass for a Mass Grave and the Bloodshed Across the Empyrean Altar Beyond the Celestial Zenith album they did in 2017. So basically, it's like if these two albums were boning. My favorite tracks from the album are the aforementioned Crown of Light and Constellations, Memories Within an Empty Castle, and Force of Death is the Force of Life, which is this awesome 2.5-minute scorcher that shows that even to this day, Inquisition can still rip your ass to shreds.
The force of death is life, as chaos is destroyer. The force of life is death, as time is king of kings.
Number 6, Saxon, Hell, Fire, and Damnation. Come on, baby. Saxon just keeps kicking ass, man. I mean, this is their 27th studio album, and they're still kicking ass. This album was also produced by the same producer that did Invincible Shield, Andy Sneap, and album sounds great. The drums are very, very crisp. The guitar sounds super rich, and Biff Bifford is still hollering like he always is. There's a lot of historical themes on this album. You have Madame Guillotine, which is about Marie Antoinette. You have The Witches of Salem, Kubla Khan and the Great Merchant of Venice. And then you have a song which I think is about William the Conqueror, 1066.
1066, the Saxons were slain, the day that the conqueror came. In 1066.
And while I was listening to 1066, it reminded me of the song that was done by the great and late actor Sir Christopher Lee, who, while he was still alive, he actually had a metal band called Charlemagne, and they did a song called The Bloody Verdict of Verdun, which just reminded me a lot of the song 1066.
I shed blood of Saxon man. I shed the blood of the Saxon man.
I shed the blood of the Saxon men.
I shed the blood of the Saxon man.
I shed it at Verdun.
I shed the blood of the Saxon man.
But yeah, just good old-fashioned heavy metal with a modern production. My favorite tracks from the album are the title track, Fire and Steel, and the awesome closer, Supercharger. Number 5, going back to USA, Idle Throne, A Clarion Call. Now, first things first, I have to give credit where credit is due. Fellow metal YouTuber S&T Young, he left a comment on my thrash metal video, so I went to go check out his channel, and I saw he did a video on thrash metal albums from 1999 to 2024. And this was the CD that he had playing through the beginning of the video. And I just heard this, and I was like, what the fuck is that? This is awesome.
Conflagration swallowing all life within its path. Earth beneath footsteps crumbling. Shadow flames the aftermath.
But yeah, Idle Throne, newer band formed in 2018. They describe themselves as being thrash / power metal / prog metal. And I'd say that's kind of accurate. I'd say it's probably like 60% thrash, 30% power, and then about 10% prog. You know, the closest comparison that I can kind of think of when I think of this band is Iced Earth. You know, kind of has that thrash, heavy, and power metal elements to it. Obviously, Iced Earth, of course. Main guitar player John Schaefer, famous respecter of government property. You know, the vocals range from being clean with a little bit of gruff to them to just straight up pure power metal. You know, the riffs are great. The songwriting is very well done. Album's about 8 tracks, 50 minutes, but it doesn't really feel like they overstay their welcome. Like, these aren't just riff salad songs. They have proper movements, motifs, all that good shit. You know, these guys are still fairly kind of unknown. Only have about 270 monthly listeners on Spotify, which, come on, people, those are fucking rookie numbers. We got to get those numbers up. And if you like what you hear, I highly recommend that you check out their Bandcamp, pick up a CD, get a t-shirt, you know, maybe get the digital album if that's more financially feasible. But I know when I get my next paycheck, I'm going to be picking up the debut and a t-shirt because I want this band to stick around and keep making cool shit. Number 4, from Canada, Spectral Wound, Songs of Blood and Mire. So Spectral Wound kept their habit of releasing a new album every 3 years, starting with their debut in 2018, Infernal Decadence, 2021's A Diabolical Thirst, and then, of course, 2024's Songs of Blood and Mire. Now, the most kind of immediate difference that kind of sets this album apart from the other two, I would say, is that there's more black and roll kind of riffs going on here, like in the lead-off single, Aristocratic, Scooter Ankle black metal. But this is by no means some shitty Satyricon black and roll album, all right? You got classic black metal affairs like Fever and Suffering and 12 Moons in Hell, the former of which sounds like Prime Behexen, and the latter of which has this great kind of open chord sounding riff that is just absolutely immaculate. But yeah, Spectral Wound is cool. You know, I talk about them more on my top 6 modern black metal bands video. But yeah, you can check that out if you want to know more about them. But yeah, 2024, Songs of Blood and Mire. Number 3, from Finland, Horna, what is this? Nyx Hymna Jole, the mighty masters of Finnish black metal. Now, I covered this band more in depth on my Love Letter to Finnish Black Metal video, but to kind of give you the cliff notes on what Horna's sound is, I would say it's usually like the old school kind of raw black metal, more straightforward, kind of punk influenced in its attitude and such. Although this album kind of strays from that a little bit, and that Horna ups the production value significantly. And while the first track is kind of the usual Horna affair, like I said, very stripped down, straightforward, the other songs, like Hymne 2, Hymne 3, they are more melodic, more musical, kind of harken back to the riffs on Ivatnag's Eflo Solfes Gantavne. Hymne 3 especially, it's got to be my favorite song on the album. Just has these really great, groovy, headbanging, melodic riffs. This album also features an acoustic version of Kualevalu Paus, another song from Ivatnags. And I would say this album is Horna's best since 2008's Senoyesi Arela. And it is absolutely my favorite album that has Spellgoth at the helm. Number 2, got some thrash for that ass. Morbid Saint, Swallowed by Hell, come on! Yeah, so actually the band's YouTube page actually left a comment on my thrash metal video, because as you can see, I have the Spectrum of Death. I put that in my top 10 thrash metal albums. So number one, I just want to say big thank you to Morbid Saint. Very much appreciated. And kind of like I said in that top 10 thrash video, this album fucking rips. And straight away, this album kicks off with Rise from the Ashes. Super fast thrash banger that sets a great tone for the rest of the album. And it doesn't slow down from there. You have songs like Burn Pit, Fuck Them All, and my favorite song on the album, Pine Tuxedo, which I think is probably the catchiest song on the whole album. This album is no frills, no nonsense, no sign up, no credit card, no bullshit, 4 inches in 4 weeks, better than Craigslist, just straight up, fast and aggressive thrash metal. Whereas some classic thrash metal bands maybe have toned down the intensity of their latest releases, Morbid Angel said, fuck that! Our ages and our prostates may have doubled in size, but we're still gonna smoke all these fairy powder puff bands like friggin' Knocked Loose and whatever, Death Heaven or some shit, I don't know. Alright, and at number 1, the best metal album released in the year 2024. I'll give you a hint. Came out November 22nd. That's right. GNX by Kendrick Lamar. Obviously, this would be a black metal release. Psych! Opeth, The Last Will and Testament. Come on, baby. I'm an Opeth fanboy. Guilty as charged. And I saw a lot of the headlines of the reviews that were coming out right before this album got released. People saying this is the best Opeth album in 20 years and all that. And I got real nervous. I know the growls are back. People are happy about that. But, I've never been a hater of the post-growl era. I still thought it was okay. Maybe not as good, but still fine. But after hearing it for myself, I will say there is some credence to that statement. I would say at a bare minimum, this is Opeth's best work since 2007's Watershed. And again, I know this is another album that also has the growls, but I really don't think the growls make or break Opeth's music. I own all 14 of the Opeth albums on CD. I would say my favorite of the post-growl era is 2016's Sorceress. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the newest album, The Last Will and Testament. But once again, Opeth returned to making a concept album, their first in 25 years, the last one being Still Life from 1999. I'm not going to spoil the concept of this record because it's actually really cool. I highly encourage you look up the lyrics, read them for yourself. But basically, by Michael Ockerfeldt's own words, for those of you who don't know, Ockerfeldt, he writes the lyrics, he's the singer, guitar player, etc. He also composes the songs. He said the concept for this album was inspired by the TV show Succession, which has to do a lot with family drama, kind of backstabbing, stuff like that. Yeah, so this album, basically, the story revolves around family secrets and drama, which get revealed as the surviving family members are trying to sort out their father's posthumous affairs. You know, this album has a great flow and production to it. You know, some of the post-Growl era Opeth stuff, the production made it sound kind of hard rock at times instead of metal, which I think is kind of what they were trying to do. You know, Michael said that he wanted to add more progressive rock influences into it. And I'm not just saying that because that stuff doesn't have growls and this has growls. If you just listen to the guitar and drum tones on this album, it just sounds kind of more modern metal as opposed to like the 70s, I don't know, hard rock, progressive rock kind of sound. Now, of course, this album didn't totally do away with, like, the 70s prog influence. I mean, you got Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. He contributes a flute solo, and I believe some spoken word bits as well. And then, you know, you got some Whirlybird sounding keyboards and other occasional proggy moments. I mean, this is Opeth after all. But yeah, this album also features the debut of Opeth's new drummer, whose name I don't know, but I probably couldn't pronounce anyway. And I gotta say, I thought their previous drummer, I forget his name, but his nickname was Axe. I was like, geez, whoever's to follow up that guy has some friggin' big shoes to fill. But this new guy is great. Like, he has great dynamics. He can play the loud stuff. He knows when to pull back. Basically, whatever Michael throws at him, this guy's like, yeah, man, I can play a beat to that, no problem. And this is also the first and so far only album that I ever pre-ordered on vinyl. I got the green vinyl discs. Quite frankly, I just had a feeling this was going to get sold out, so I just want to get my hands on it. That ended up being a very lucky and serendipitous purchase, because this album is fantastic. So that concludes the list. The top 10 metal albums of 2024. I don't know what 2025 is going to bring. I would love a new Sargeist, a new Behexen, a new Migwa. But I guess if I could have any New Year's resolution for 2025, can I just at least get fucking laid once, please?